Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me again, Dr. Halima, and today we are going to start with lecture number 1. And the title of the lecture is What is Translation? Now, in this session, we are going to go through the following points. I will mention the points so that you are aware of what's going to happen in a minute. We will find out about the learning outcomes of this lecture. We will talk about the meaning of translation as a noun or as a verb. We will explain a simple definition of translation, and then we will explore some advanced definitions of translation, and then we will see how we can achieve equivalence in translation, and then we will see how we can use the 6WH question in looking for equivalence in translating a text. After that, we will see whether we can have a good translation or the definition of a good translation. We will as well find out about the laws of good translation, the rules of good translation. Last but not least, we will mention a more advanced definition of translation, which is as a process and product. So these are the points we will cover through our session today. Now, if we, as I mentioned in my introductory session, we should ask ourselves, and you ask yourselves, what are the learning outcomes of this lecture? Now, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to show knowledge of different meanings of the term translation. You should also be able to show knowledge of different definitions of translation as a phenomena. And hopefully, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to make your own definition or your own concept of translation. So make sure that you are able to do these 3 by the end of this lecture. If you can't, then you need to go back and do some work and go through the lecture again until you learn these 3 things. Now, before you answer the question, what is translation, we need to know the meaning of translation. What is the meaning of translation as a noun or as a verb? Now, I have mentioned here about 4, just to give you an idea about the meaning of translation. As you can see, number 1, the origin of the word translation is the Latin word translatus, which means transferred. Transferred means from one language to another. The second meaning, which is the dictionary meaning, if you look it up in any dictionary, the meaning of translation, of especially the verb to translate, is to express or be capable of being expressed in another language or dialect. Now, I've mentioned here in French to give you an idea. It means in French traduction as a noun. But as a verb, you can see a traduit as a verb. Whereas in Arabic, as you know, the meaning of translation, الترجمة من لغة إلى أخرى. This is the noun. As for the verb, as you know, يترجم من لغة إلى أخرى. This is the meaning of translation in general terms. Now, there are so many definitions of translations, and translation has gone through so many developments in theory and practice. What I've done, I've given you first some simple definitions of translation, and then you build, and then we build on that. And I have selected about 3 or 4 simple definitions. Now, Catford is a well-known translator and a theorist of translation. He defines translation as the replacement of textual material in one language, SL, by equivalent textual material in another language, TL. SL means the source language, TL the target language. For instance, if you want to translate from English into Arabic, English is the source language and Arabic is the target language. If you want to translate from Arabic into English, then Arabic is the source language and English is the target language. So SL is the initials of these words, and TL is the initial of these words. Now this is Catford's definition, very simple. Now Newmark, Peter Newmark, defines translation as a craft. Imagine, as a craft, consisting in the attempt to replace a written message and or statement in one language by the same message and or statement in another language. It is more or less the same as the top one. But if you have a message or if you have a statement in English, you need to replace it with the message and the statement in Arabic. And the same, if you have a message in Arabic or a statement in Arabic and you want to translate it from Arabic into English, you need to replace this message or this statement into English. Bell looks at or defines definition from 2 points of view. Or he mentions, he doesn't define it actually, he just mentions it. He mentions 2 views. One view, look at translation as an art. Why as an art? Because it used to be done especially when the scholars of last century were preoccupied with the translation of literary texts as a pastime. In the past, in the last century, scholars or writers or translators, or not really translators, but scholars, they used to translate or they used to practice translation in their leisure time. I mean, it's not like they are making money out of it. No, it was like a pleasure for them, especially when they wanted to translate literary text like poetry, drama, novels, and so on. Another view Bell mentions, as you can see, it looks at translation as a profession, where the majority of translators are professionals engaged in making a living rather than a pastime. This is mainly clear in the translation of technical, medical, legal, and administrative texts. In other words, translation is like a profession. Translators are like professionals. They make a living out of translation. So, they translate because they want to make money. And what do they translate? They translate mainly all these technical material like legal English or medical text or administrative text, all other types of texts. So Bell mentions two types, two definitions or two views of translation. One, they look at it as an art, and one looks at it as a profession, as I have explained. In the present sense of the word, another definition, simple definition, we can look at translation as a generic term used to refer to the process of rendering a text in one language into an equivalent text in another. Really, translation is like an idiom or a word or a term used to refer to the process of rendering. Rendering what? Means transferring, means conveying, means translating really from one language into another language. But the important word here is equivalent. So if you have a text in Arabic, you need to find it an equivalent text in English, and vice versa. The concept of equivalence, we will come to it later in the session. So these are just simple definitions of translation. Okay, now as you can see, we move to advanced definitions of translations, more comprehensive than the simple ones. This is due to the developments in translation studies during last century. Now Bell seems to suggest a more comprehensive definition of translation which stresses the dimension of semantic and stylistic equivalence in translation. Now, here we have two keywords, semantic and stylistic equivalence. Very important points. Semantic, which has something to do with the meaning, and stylistic, which has something to do with the style. Equivalence, you will find out later what we mean by equivalence. Now, for him, translation is the replacement of a representation of a text in one language by a representation of an equivalent text in a second language. Represent means to act exactly in place of somebody or in place of something. Like this text in Arabic, we want it to be in English, so the English text should be exactly representation of this. In other words, the English text should be exactly the same, similar to the Arabic text. In other words, equivalent in meaning and in style. This is according to Bell. Now, there is a more or another advanced definition of translation introduced by Arjona as follows. This is a bit more comprehensive than Bell's. Translation is a generic term for the interlingual, sociolinguistic, and cultural transfer of any message from one community to another through various modes of written, oral, or mechanical means, or combinations thereof. In other words, to be honest, this is a very comprehensive one. It looks at translation as a transfer. Of what? Of the interlingual, sociolinguistic, and cultural aspects of any message from one community to another. It could be in writing, or it could be written. It could be oral. It could be mechanical, or it could be both of them. So this is a more comprehensive definition of translation. Now we come to the key word of Bell's definition, equivalence. And it is very important, equivalence. How can we achieve equivalence in translation? Equivalence, when we are faced by a text, written or oral, in a language we know, we are able to work out its equivalence by looking into the following. Now, if you know Arabic, and you want to translate a text from Arabic into English, and you want to work out, means you want to find out the equivalence of this text, of this message, or this statement, or this text, okay? You want to translate from Arabic into English, or from English into Arabic. What can you do as a start? Now, what you have to do, or what you can do, you can look into the following points. The semantic sense of each word and sentence. You have to check the meaning. And the meaning, the sense, the semantic sense means the meaning of each word and each sentence. You can't translate it if you don't know the meaning. Now, the second one, it's communicative value. Number 3, its place in time and space. And number 4, the information about the participants involved in its production and receptions. Don't worry about this. The second slide will explain all this in more detail. But these are the points you need to look at if you want to find out or work out the equivalence of any text you want to translate from one language into another. Now, this is very important, a very important point. Now, how can we use the 6WH question in looking for equivalence in translating a text? I'm sure the majority of you are aware of the 6WH question. The 6WH question can be used not only in translation, can be used in all walks of life, in all aspects of professions. You can always ask yourself these 6 questions before you do anything. This is off the subject, but here Bell uses these 6WH questions to find out about the equivalence of a text. Now, question number 1, or the first WH question, what? You ask yourself, what is the message contained in the text? Before you translate any text or any message, you ask yourself, what is the message contained in the text? The content of the signal, the prepositional content of the speech acts. So the first question you ask yourself if you want to find out the equivalence is, okay, what is the message? What is the signal? What is the content of the speech acts, whether it is written or oral? The second question, you ask yourself, why? Why am I translating this? Now, the word why, or the question why, orients us towards the intentions of the sender, the purpose for which the text was issued. Now, you need to ask yourself, why did the writer write this message? Or why did the speaker is saying this? So, you need to ask yourself always why he is saying this and why he is writing this. It's very important. Now, the third question you ask yourself when you want to translate any message, any text, any statement, is when. When is this statement was issued? Now, when is concerned with the time of communication realized in the text and setting it in its historical context, contemporary or set in recent or remote past or future. Now, when you are translating a text or a message or a statement, again, you can apply this question when. When was this written? The time is very important. Was it written in the past, 200-300 years ago, or was it written few days ago, or is it written for the future? So time is very important because it gives you a lot of information about the text. Now, question number 4, how? How is a bit ambiguous. Ambiguous means vague, not clear. So it could refer to two things. Manner of delivery, how. It means how was the message delivered, the manner it was delivered. They say the tenor of the discourse. Was the tenor or was the manner of the writer or the speaker serious or ironic or comic? So you need to understand the tenor of the discourse, the manner of the discourse was delivered. The second, it could refer to the medium of communication. Now, the mode of discourse, there is a big difference between a written discourse and oral discourse, and this is very important if you want to find out about the equivalence of this particular discourse. So how is concerned with the manner of delivery or the medium of communication. Now, question number 5, where? The W question number 5, where, is concerned with the place of the communication. The physical location of the speech event realized in the text. The place. I mean, the text, did it take place in Europe? Did it take place in the Arab world? So you need to check about the place. Did it take place in the company? Did it take place in another place? So the place of the text, the place mentioned in the text, plays a great role in helping you find it out, the equivalence of that text or that message or whatever you call it, is a message or a text or a statement or a discourse. Now the last question, who? Who refers to the participants involved in the communication, the sender and receiver or receivers. Both spoken and written reveal the characteristics of the speaker or writer as an individual. In other words, when you translate, after you have read it, you ask yourself, who wrote it? What kind of person was he? It is addressed to who? The receiver. Now, when you go through the text, you will be able really to get a lot of information about the person who wrote the message and to who it is written to. So the main characteristics and the main qualities, and this would affect the message, and consequently it would help you find out the equivalence of the text in another language. So these 6 WH questions, if you apply them properly into any text you want to translate from one language into another, help you find the right equivalence of a text or a message or a statement. Now, somebody might ask me now from you, who would say, what is a good translation? It's a very difficult question. A very difficult question. Although Bell defines a good translation, but it's my personal view, it's a matter of taste. It's a matter of taste. Before we go through Bell's definition. Now, according to Bell, a good translation is that in which the merit of the original work is so completely transfused into another language as to be as distinctly apprehended and as strongly felt by a native of the country to which that language belongs as it is by those who speak the language of the original work. It's a bit advanced definition, it's a bit comprehensive, it's a bit complicated, but in a nutshell, it is really translating a text, the original. You have an Arabic text, it's written by X, original work, and you want to translate it into English. It has to be exactly original like this, which is impossible. But according to Bell, a good translation is which achieves this particular criteria. Now he said the original work is so completely transfused into another language. Transfused is a word used if you want to transfuse blood, you know, blood transfusion. It is a very nice word to use, like making the translation like a blood getting into your body, into your veins. The blood of your body goes into the blood of another body, so it is exactly your blood transfused. And when it is transfused into another language, it must be understood, apprehended, distinctly apprehended. It means it clearly understood by you and by the other person. If I understand this text in Arabic and I want to translate it from Arabic into English, this person, this English person, should understand it clearly, exactly the same way as I do. And he should feel as exactly as I do. So this is really a good translation, which is, I'm afraid to say, this is very ideal, and I would love to achieve this. I am a practitioner and a theorist in translation, but still it is not. It is good to aim at, very good. Put this a target, but it's not that easy or simple to achieve. But this is a good translation. Of course, it is a good translation if we can achieve this. So put it in front of you as a target, as a goal when you are translating. Always ask yourself, is it a good translation according to these criteria or not? Okay? Now, there are certain rules and regulations for good translation. Now, 3 laws of good translation. As a result of the above definition of translation, the following 3 laws emerge from it. Now, a good translation should give a complete transcript of the ideas of the original work. Again, transcript of the ideas. The text has got ideas, so you have to transfer these ideas into another language exactly as they are in the original work. It's not only that, the second law, that the style and manner of writing should be of the same character with that of the original. Again, as I said earlier, the style is very important. So you have to make sure that the style of the Arabic writer A is transferred to an English writer A, exactly the same, of the same character, the same ideas. Not only that, the most difficult bit of this law, the last law, is very, very difficult to achieve. That the translation should have all the ease of the original composition. Not easy to achieve, but it's good. If you could achieve this, it's beautiful. The ease of the original. It means when you read something, you feel it flows. You feel it's beautiful when you read it. It reads well, and you feel good about the ideas, about the structure, about the style, about the manner, about all other factors that play a role in writing a text. So this feel of ease and comfort should be transferred and should be translated into English. Now, I don't know about whether an English person would feel the same ease and comfort and relaxed about the style of a certain Arabic text. So these are the three main laws that emerge from good translation. The most or a more advanced definition of translation can be seen when we look at it as a process and product. This is a very recent development in translation, and it is a very important, and I would like to end my session with this particular point about translation. So translation could be defined as the abstract concept which encompasses both the process of translation and the product of that process. In other words, translating is the process. It means that to translate means it is the activity rather than the tangible object. It is the activity you are translating. It is not the product. It is the process. It is how you are working it out. So this is the process, and it's been researched a lot, this process of translation. So translating is the process, and translation is the product of the process of translating. In other words, the translated text. So a more advanced definition of translation is really to look at translation as a process and product. Process is the activity, and a product is the translated text, the result. And I would like to thank you very much for this session, and see you next session, inshallah. Thank you.